Alright, so this is a reading for your daughter. I'm not going to say who it is. So as we go through this, I'm going to give it my best. I'm feeling a little off today, but and also if you hear loud sounds from like thuds and things crashing, that's from upstairs. It's a long story, but yeah. In any case, here's how it goes. Okay, so what I'm seeing from the event itself, based on the charts, I'm gonna try not showing the. Actually, I'm actually gonna do that right now. I'm going to cut off who it's specifically for, and then I'm going to just continue with the reading. Okay, so let's give it a try here. Okay, so it starts off with, first of all, because it's job related, we're going to go into the actual, the 10th house. It says here in her own chart, she does tend to switch jobs quite often, or there's a lot of changes happening with her career. It's a lot of it is tied to how she feels about her career. So, and she's very sensitive as it is, right? So she's highly sensitive. She has her moon in Pisces, so she tends to kind of go with the flow a lot, feel things, especially particularly when it comes to like her reputation or careers, because just like her brother, people perceive her as kind of like this out of this person world, very aloof, quite aloof. But a lot of the jobs that she has, especially in foreign countries, we have Uranus here, tied into the 9th house, which is foreign stuff, is like these sudden changes that are happening can give her a lot of wisdom, can give her a lot of like input and information on how she would learn from the situation, how she could actually maneuver that so that it's more something that the lessons that she's learning, because a lot of it is tied to kind of like maybe being right or being like correct in a certain way, especially with Uranus in Aquarius. She has a tendency to have this energy about her, but when it comes to changes, it's like, okay, I welcome the changes, it's great. The other thing though is because it's opposite let's see here, Anubis. Well, actually, let's go with Uranus first. Uranus with Pallas Athena here is opposite Metis. So Metis was all about, what do you call this? Things that are foreign, things that are, if I'm getting that right. Let me just go back here to my chart. I have a cheat sheet. Okay. Yeah, so things that are kind of foreign that come into her life, things that are, because she has this ability to have, she's very crafty, she's very cunning, she's very prudent as well. She's kind of impartial and neutral about things the way she sees it. That's part of her, or at least she's had to learn how to do that. But no, not really. No, it's actually in the 3rd house. It's not connected to her core beliefs right here in the mid and in the deer. But she has that ability to see things through neutrality, through being prudent. She usually looks for solutions. She's kind of the person who people look for advice for, as well. I would say advice, like her siblings possibly. Like people probably look to her for the truth. She has a lot of integrity when it comes to advice, or that she gives, these thoughts that she has. Is very deep as well. So she knows how to work with that. She's kind of like a magical effect. She's very much people see her as probably like a counselor, or she's probably had a counseling job, or she just knows how to work with, how to give advice. She can see the little things as well. She can see the little details of things, and I would say she's she's very artful in the way she communicates. So that ties in with the metis, with the placement of metis, or she ties in with her ability to see things, and now she has actually a fourth. She has like she knows what's ahead. What else is there? Yeah. So in turn, because of that ability, it kind of like she's had to question her role in terms of like her job, especially in like her philosophy about work, philosophy about career, and her philosophy or perspective or perception about what reputation is. This is the 10th house is tied to midheaven, so it's about her perception of what career is. Now, because Uranus here was actually also retrograde, it means that she kind of has this internalized. The changes tend to feel more of a perception that's her own. It's not necessarily that her jobs change. It's almost like she wants to change. She wants a different. She wants a revolutionary type of job, and she kind of has to work through it. But because of like, I guess she it kind of she's very connected to her. I would say she's connected to her ability to see things from a childlike perspective. She wants to enjoy things. She wants to communicate, where it's kind of more like a spur of the moment. But because it's retrograde Uranus here, it's opposite. That often implies that not only is it because it's retrograde, but because it's opposite, like she has to come to terms with the fact that it's almost like she has to be able to adapt to those changes. So she has to learn how to see beyond what's there. It's almost like it's kind of feels like it's kind of forced in a certain way, like it's kind of just explosive. And it feels like this might come off as a shock to her. And if it's not a shock to her, then it comes off as this very how do you call this? She applies a lot of logic to it. She's very much in her head about her, specifically about counseling. Orcus is also about like Orcus is tied to Metis here. It's not tied to Uranus. So Orcus here implies that because of Orcus, it's like she has to have integrity in what she says, how she communicates to others. She, let me double check here. Okay. She has to find a connection to her natural abilities. Otherwise, she feels kind of disconnected. It's what do you call this? Maybe she's a little hard on herself, right? Because it's like maybe the way she gives counseling or advice to other people. It's or when people just ask her questions generally, she probably feels like it's not enough, or it's but it is in Leo, so Orcus in Leo, I would say it's like it's quite direct, but there's a lot of pride in it. There's a lot of pride included in it. There's a lot of this feeling of like I need to be kind of in control and manage people, but not in a for negative way. It's very like very positive, very like childlike. I just want to be me kind of thing. She wants to shine, and that's kind of where she's learning how to have integrity. Okay, so a lot of it is shadow stuff that's going through there when it comes to her, the way she communicates, and that in turn, of course, affects her. Affects her ability to work with her counseling side, her ability to give advice. So that ties in with the job that she has. Again, specifically for like foreign stuff, maybe part of her education was also part of that. Maybe she kind of doubted her own education. There's a lot of doubt there. There's a lot of over analysis, probably a little bit to the colder side, because you have Pallas Athena here. And what happens often with Pallas Athena, this Pallas Athena is she's a lot of wisdom, right? It's awareness. It's kind of like this sort of download wisdom, knowledge. It's not just regular knowledge, it's wisdom. So she has a kind of experience it. Being resourceful is part of that. Recognizing that effort and zeal has to be part of the process. It can't just be like, I'm just going to get knowledge, right? She has to experience it. There's a two-sided stuff to this as well, where she also needs to learn how to listen. instead of like just being giving advice, also being given advice, but also giving advice. So it's both, right? So there's probably a lot of inequality and kind of imbalance, not necessarily imbalance, but kind of when it comes to her education. And it comes out very strong, so she has a lot of doubt when it comes to that. It's almost like she can't access her left brain, which is like the feminine side, like her sense of independence as well is included here. Her intellectuality, her instinct, and her independence. So she comes out kind of over analytical sometimes. Okay. What is this? She also, I guess there's a possibly I don't know if it's included here, but probably like sexism is probably included here. I'm just gonna say a bunch of things like probably like athleticism included here, sexism, or kind of injustice in the system. Um, Human rights is probably included in here as well. I don't know if it has something to do with knitting, because that's Athena. She's the goddess of weaving, so weaving, knitting, sewing, those kind of things. But seeing more like the connections of things, that's really Athena. So she's understanding the connection between things. There's a lot of like intellectuality, really much in the head though. So whatever her ideologies, her beliefs are, she tries to create a lot of justice with it. So she wants to kind of revolutionize. That's her kind of like internal beliefs about it, but she doesn't know how to go about it. So that's why a lot of it is just like more advice that she gives, but being honest with that advice that she gives, or being honoring her own advice to herself, I would say is the key to her proceeding with jobs that actually resonate with her basic needs, because that's the moon here. That's basic needs. Her basic needs have a lot to do with that Pisces need of wanting to go beyond the beyond and really like connecting and having a meaningful, ethereal sort of relationship with people. Now, when it comes to the job itself, I see here Saturn in retrograde. This was like a few days ago. Saturn in retrograde here shows that there's a pullback of the limitations. So she feels like she should have had this, or she should have careers, or she's kind of being, in a way, it's kind of like a different type of career that she's trying to get into. But Saturn here is trying to tell her, it's like, sure, there's no limits, it's open doors right now, but it's almost like she has to find her own limitations. Like, what limits does she has to play? What limits can she place on herself and on the things she does, and on her own beliefs and her own reputation specifically, because this is the 10th house. Okay, so she has to find a way to. She's being given the opportunity to say, okay, well, what are your internal limits? Are you processing those? Do you have fears inside you? What are you afraid of? Right. So maybe she applied for this job at a time when she's kind of afraid, because, I mean, I see it her here also. Saturn is actually square Hera. So Hera is the darker side of Juno. And what I mean by this is, Hera from mythology. I believe it's square. Hold on, let me double check. It's a little far off, but possibly. Maybe I'm not going to read that one. Let's see what the other ones say. Actually, I'm going to skip Hera. Sorry about that. Oh, okay, so we have it 8 degrees, about 8, 9 degrees, 8 something, 9 degrees, Saturn, square, itself, Pallas Athena here. So here, something to do with her health, because it's transiting her health, so she's getting these opportunities to kind of question, maybe like opportunities to go back to connecting with her own health and finding what's true for her own health. Like, how does this all come through? Because when she was young, when she was, sixth house here is intercepted. Intercepted houses often means that right here. Intercepted houses often mean that it's there's a feeling of a block, or this feeling it's not happening. So she never really had issues with her health, but that also means that she never really had opportunities to find jobs that she kind of resonated with. in this case, like jobs that kind of tied to the truth that she can learn from when it comes to learning from the past. So it's quite heavy actually, I find here. She also has core retrograde with Ixion retrograde. Core often implies like connection with life, understanding the this sort of this connection with life is connection to um, kind of like it's the way I see it is like core represents creativity, and sometimes we have to kind of acknowledge that the past is also part of ourselves. So core is about going with the flow of life, but sometimes when we go with the flow of life, there's like hindrances, there's like blocks from past lives, particularly because we thought we just got we get rid of it. Um, so we feel like if we get rid of it on the external, right, then it's gonna work out. No, it has to be done internally, right? So um, core is about that whole feeling of like I can flow with life if only when I deal with integrating the past experiences that I've had as a part of my own experience, as in this is part of life itself. So, right, so this egoic yearning, this egoic need to kind of, um, it's based on fear, is kind of going into, what do you call this? Going into, how do you call this? It's a little very, it's very esoteric and very complicated. So core is trying to get into, the core inside of us is trying to get out of the fear by actually kind of escaping it. And retrograde is kind of like this doubt of this connection to life itself. So in other words, health-wise, it's also a disconnection to our own like health itself. Like if we looked at, I'm going to look into the medical side of this one. So like uh, maybe there's like underdeveloped or overdeveloped parts of her body. That ties in with the energetics, the energy that she's going through, like wound healing. So healing wounds, that's part of that as well. Any toxins in her system, blood as well. Because there's a block. This feels like a block, and she probably doesn't know how to be herself. So that in itself is kind of preventing the flow of life in her own life. If we looked at Ixion, Ixion is like violation, but because it's in retrograde, it's almost like this perceived violation of health. But again, because it's intercepted, it's almost like that didn't really happen. Um, but there's an internal sort of like questioning, and it's not necessarily that she needed to have violence in her life, but it's more like like a karma, like what choices she has to make so that she can overcome it. Like it's not about even overcoming it, it's sort of like being honest with your internal like your internal body, your internal carnal like body. So maybe a part of her kind of rejected that, right? Because she does have moon in Pisces, and Pisces tends to run away from the physical because it's kind of feels like it's the physical. It's kind of like, oh, it's not useful. That's not true. The physical can be just as spiritual as the non-physical. So she's had to go through that her entire life. So here we have this whole Pallas Athena kind of coming through and saying, what wisdom can you get from this experience? Looking at your health and seeing how can you work through it. So that in turn is challenging her. Was she supposed to go into something health related? I mean, the fact that she got into the movies kind of just draws her attention into the magic and illusion that's tied to Neptune, which rules Pisces. And so she's probably wondering, it's like, but instead maybe she should focus more on things that are more grounded, like less of the what you call like the glamour of life, less of the whole like, oh, it looks good, but is it right? The shadow of her moon in her jobs in Pisces is that she's probably still neglects the the shadow of that which comes through in Virgo. Pisces and Virgo are opposite signs. So here she needs to get back in touch with her physical side, her honoring that spiritual body, right? The spiritual side of her body also, right? Actually, in fact, you have Moon opposite, so 9 degrees, Moon opposite Anubis, Artemis, Juno, and also Desdemona. So, growing up, she has felt like she's had to transition things, kind of to learn from the things that she's very loyal to her family. She's very connected. She's very loyal. But there's a shadow to that too, which is like maybe because she's had enough of it, or there's a part of her subconsciously. The fourth house also ties in with the subconscious, things that we kind of bury, things that we kind of like, oh, I don't. It's like an automatic no. If we don't honor our basic needs, what happens is that it tends to act itself later in adult life. So she's probably had to just be of service to her family, especially with the placement in Virgo. She's had to do things so that she can be like sort of like this, I guess you can say like again, kind of still an advisor, or more like a guide to her family. She's very loyal to her family. That's Juno right here. And she's kind of had to, I guess, in a way, that was her way of creating things that are natural for her. So Artemis here, this one's kind of, let me try this one. Artemis in Virgo. Yeah, so her inner nature. Maybe she took little bits and pieces of herself that were natural, so that so that could help her be of service to her family, be of like a value to her family. Maybe there were also times where she probably did not feel like she was heard or acknowledged, especially for the little things. I'm just saying this is possible. So this is Desdemona. Desdemona is based on the story of her not being, people actually jealous of her, maybe, because I don't know if some people in the family got jealous of her, or that she, but she's very loyal. Like I said, there's a lot of loyalty and passion and truth, but also naivety. Okay, so a lot of blind faith, they're included there, but there's a lot of, again, this is all perception too. Like a person's birth chart is sort of perception. It's a perception of the person, of the perception of your life, perception of things outside of yourself. So anyways, how this ties into right here with the transiting Pallas Athena is that because it's in 12 degrees, we look into how that ties in with Desdemona. Actually, Desdemona is tied here. So it's actually, is it Desdemona? Yeah, right here. 9 degrees right here. So that's Desdemona. It's square Pallas Athena. So again, it kind of comes back to her beliefs about herself, like the way she grew up. She probably thinks that she wasn't, sorry. Yeah, like it's almost here. We have, maybe there's, I don't know if it was, she felt that there was a kind of betrayal, or maybe there's like delayed or hidden truth. She felt kind of left out. What did I say? I don't know about bullying, but kind of like maybe there were things that were just lies or truth. There was like fabricated evidence or fabricated like information, things that were just kind of like put there. So there's a lot of suspicion. Most likely, maybe to her, or rather, she was like the perfect child, I suppose, right? The child that one second here. The child that was of like always helpful in the family. Double check. Anubis is it's tied to this one. So she had to process all that. Her self-worth is tied to this one, or like where she's going. Her self-worth, but also soul-worth, like where she's supposed to head off. Like, like where do we go from here kind of thing, right? So she has to process things that were old. She's continuously processing, but she does it to the little things. It's like she does it through, like, in a way, she kind of uses service as a way to help her deal with it. So it ties in with their Pisces placement. So we have this, I believe that we have here a, what you call like a T square, right? So we have here, let me check. Actually, Orcus is included here. So again, she's being called to honestly assess her own personal beliefs as a child. Like, I mean, if she's not getting it, then she's kind of like, she's not going to get the right thing because she's not honest with what she wants. Fourth house is usually tied to the moon, which is like her basic needs. If she continues to neglect her basic needs, but at the same time honoring her physical side, it's almost like if she's getting into this job, like, or this interview, it can go either way, right? It could be that it is what she wants. It could be that it is what she is looking for. So we're not really sure exactly how this is going to turn out, to be honest with you. Because I see like these squares. But let's take a look at the, not trying to be negative here, but it's just what I see here. So let's see, we have, oh, okay, we have, what is this one? This is Ixion Folus Core. So, yes, that's fine. Ixion Folus Core. So that combination is pretty much like decision making that ties to, again, that whole like being connected to an understanding of, like, I would say, like, when I say connection to life, like core, I put it in my cheat sheet as like life rhythm. A core is quite deep because she's out there. Core is a dwarf planet. Let me go straight into the mythology here. So it's really about unity, but like unity when there's separation from your own life, which is because he didn't have parents, so either he had parents or he did not have parents, so kind of like uncertainty. And so there's a lot of uncertainty there. It's actually tied into my fourth house. Now that I look at it, it's like, yeah, it ties to a lot of uncertainty or certainty. Most of it is uncertainty because of, so we cannot be whole. Because core is representing that wholeness and connection to life itself, like being connected to life and the flow of life. And also about labels. Let's see here. Fullness is like sudden, like changes, decisions that we make. So decisions that we make that have like big consequences, small choices but big consequences. So in other words, kind of being unconscious of what we do. So like, for example, saying some words, saying something, expressing something, but then it comes off this way, actually has like a massive effect. It's kind of like the butterfly effect. You have little things, but it's like blah, massive, right? That's fullness. Ixion again is about violations, and the reason why there's violations is because there's this disregard and a subjugation. There's like a suppression of one's basic carnal needs. It's about bliss. So with it here, it's like wounding is coming back into her life. It's kind of like wounding of reputation and career. But the thing is with core here is telling her to, it's not in retrograde. Okay, these planets are not in retrograde right here. It's trying to her placement in Anubis, which in turn Anubis, Artemis, Juno. It's trine, so that means it's like there's a flow for her to analyze that. It's coming to, this whole analysis of like her trying to figure out, what does it mean to have this job? What does it mean to be doing this? Right? Um, so I looked at one second here. I looked at several things, and I looked at the word like interview. Sorry, the internet's a little slow. So a lot of it is tied to actually Penelope's interviews. Penelope, and who else is included? Interviews. What I'm saying is in terms of like the jobs, that's why she went for this one. It's not really about the interview itself. Sorry to say that, but it is about that. That's important because it affects her career. Like, affects her career is like something we put in a box, right? It's like, oh, this is career, and then what? Right? So she has to, she's she's naturally being, I guess, tested, as if you can say that, maybe tested in terms of like what kind of job she's supposed to get into. Like, I mean, what is a job anyways? If you think about a job, it's work that you get paid for. And what is paying? What is money? What is all that stuff? Isn't it symbolic? Isn't money a symbol of freedom? So what is the flow of life for her? The choices she has to make in order for her to find her own bliss. What is that? Right? If she's going back to these tendencies of like being of service to people and the world, she cannot do that completely unless she's truly honest with why she's doing it in the first place. She's trying to fulfill some sort of sense of self-worth, right? Because, I mean, if we looked at her past lives, let's go back to her south node here. If we look at her past life, there's a lot of power struggles, right? Power struggles pertaining to her own sense of, like, her growth. There's a lot of, because but Pluto retrograde here shows that it's like, it's sort of like this subconscious, and maybe she's not even aware of it. It's actually unconscious because it's in the 6th house. This is the house of the unconscious. So she's unconscious about her own ability to grow, inspire, and mature, and actually expand, and really even getting into her own business. That's related to that as well. But mostly it's about her own personal philosophy, her own, she never probably had contact with that. She probably doesn't know about her past lives. She's not really aware of it, or she has a kind of a disconnect with her past life, especially at this age. She's still, in her 20s. So I don't know. Like, I could look into her. Actually, let's take a look at that right now. I'm going to go into the website that I go to and see her progression chart as of today, as I'm recording this one. Okay. So it's still in Sagittarius, but it's actually been released. She feels like it's not as like blocked. So she kind of has this sort of, she's starting to feel something. She's starting to kind of connect with it. Yeah. So it's not in the intercepted house like you see here, right? It's in, of course, it's also in Sagittarius. It's going to switch over later on. It's going to go, and our Pluto is going to go into Capricorn eventually later on. No, not really. It's well, I mean, when I say move on, I mean like it's not a transit. What I mean by this is just she's going to feel like this. She can, yeah, it's in, because it's still in retrograde in her own progression chart. Like how much she's changed. This is what it's for. So she feels like she's still powerless when it comes to, particularly when it comes to enjoying things. It's in the 5th house here. I see it. So she's not really connecting to that. I see here that there's Aphrodite in her progression chart. It's conjuncting her Pluto. So she feels like a disconnect from her own desires. There's something about Aphrodite as well. I think I took notes on this. Aphrodite. Ah, okay. Maybe she feels like she's not part of the new generation. I don't know. That's something else. Yeah. Okay, so yeah, so her earthly self, her earthly desires, her earthly love, earthly connections to things, earthly, like, So she feels a disconnect with that still. However, that's not necessarily a bad thing. It means that she needs to. Usually, when we're shown something that we don't want, it's an opportunity for us to realize, oh, so I should go into what I do want, right? The opposite is being shown to us so that we honor and go back into and acknowledge and go deep into like what is it that I really want. So that's what Ixion is really showing here. At least Ixion is what it's showing. What else do we have here? Okay, so let's go into Penelope. Pretty sure I put Penelope here. Right here. So the money earning house, it's in the 11th house right here. Okay, it's in the 11th house. So she has it conjunct, it's a transit, so it's Penelope transiting Eris. So again, she's questioning the truth behind all of it. She's questioning, actually, even a lot of the wounding of society has kind of like, this is just the collective, this is a transit, so it's a collective pain and wounding of sense of freedom, humanity. It's in retrograde, so it's happening in little spots in the world. It's happening in it's happening on a very small scale, right? But it's conjunct Eris Penelope. So what that means is that she's Penelope here is actually, I think it's moved from her own birth chart. Okay, because Penelope is right here. But Penelope is turned into retrograde, so it's pulled back. So the sense of like, she probably wonders like, can I still be loyal? Because Penelope is about loyalty. That's interesting. Where did my chart cheat sheet go? So it's ownership, fidelity, longevity, and preservation. Okay, so it's kind of that feel of like everything's good enough. Penelope in mythology was the one who was kind of like, what do you call this? I guess she was like, even though she had her husband, that the husband wouldn't come. Like there's this, alright, 1 second. So Penelope was, I guess you can say, being tested in a way. The universe was testing her. That Penelope, her husband was kind of like away, basically, but then I think her father was trying to get her to move on because it's almost like he's been away for such a long time. But she really like stuck on. She pretended to be like, oh, she was kind of just going along with it and testing the suitors and like seeing if they can live up to her expectations. So she's very, very loyal, right? So she had to use her seductive methods, like she had to use her inner powers to kind of like saying, okay, you want to marry me even though I'm already married, okay? So, right? So it's a lot of it is also proving one's worth. So she's trying to prove that she's loyal. So here it's about being loyal to a certain group because it's his transiting your 11th house, being to the collective or your group that your daughter's in. But Eris is in retrograde here, so it's kind of like an internal question of, do I belong? Where do I belong? And where am I included? Like, who do I need to be loyal to? Who do I need to connect with? So this whole thing tied to the interview thing basically means like, is she probably questioned why she took that interview in the first place. So let's see if I can find, that's 26 degrees. It's square Mars. So I would say she was just more like, she was very much like, just she went ahead with the interview, and maybe a lot of it is tied to her self-worth. Like she did the interview because she believed that she would just give her money. But the thing is, Mars here is conjunct Asmodeus, and Asmodeus is kind of like, it feels like it's a trick, So Asmodeus is the demon in mythology. Second here. So Asmodeus helps us to become aware of temptations, to just go into the, especially right now, which your daughter's probably going into the old systems. Like, I need to get an interview instead of finding her own sense of self-worth, instead of finding her own sort of career. She's going into this whole, I'm going to, because she wants security, right? Her son, right, is in Cancer. Naturally, they want security. That's a normal thing. You know as is, you're Taurus. So this just sort of feels like I'm being tricked to go into this one. So her mind is tricking her into going into a job that maybe she doesn't even like. Because it is square to Penelope, it's like right here, square to Penelope and Eris and Chiron, actually, right here, all three. And it's like the wounds are coming back up in terms of like in just sort of questioning inside, just like, do I really want this? Do I really want this? But I'm just going to go ahead with it anyways. But it's like this illusion that it's like, if I just do this, there's this false hope that it's going to be, oh, this is going to be the job. So if she feels like that, most likely the energy she's going through with it, it's probably not going to turn out well. She might or she might not get it. That's really up to, it's still probability of yes or no. Let's see here. 26 degrees. It is opposite. Is it? Hold on. 26 degrees. Cancer. 26 degrees. Okay. So Osiris is opposite of that. Again, there's a T square here, or is there a? Yeah. Okay. The Sun Juno right here is conjunct. So she has this like grand T square, like literally like a cardinal grand T square. She's had to take initiative and just go for the job and go for the application, apply for it. But I feel like with Osiris here, there's a potential for it to kind of, and she's gonna transform through this. She's gonna have to learn through it. She's gonna have to go deeper into herself and really process this. But there's a possibility that it's probably not going to turn out the way she wants it, right? Because Osiris right here, Osiris represents breaking apart of things. So even though she might get it, it kind of makes her feel like it's not really what she really wants. At least, I don't know, I think it's really about self-worth. It's tied to self-worth and security, and it'll break apart, I would say, because you have this conjunct with Pluto and Osiris here. So it'll probably also give her, even if she does get it, it'll help her to at least learn from and transform through it. It's in the 8th house here, the house of transformation, and transmute that energy of like losing something. She might lose something from the job, even though she gets it. So whether she gets it or not, there's something that will break apart, or something that will really like it. I don't know, maybe she's doing it to also replace something else. Maybe it is a replacement, because Osiris is about replacement. But again, we have Pluto here. Pluto here is about breaking down of things. It's getting to the truth of our core, to the core of things, and really like, is this what you really want? It's similar to Aries, but Pluto is more, it's subtle, right? Because it's tied to her 8th house, is a lot to do with psychological health, but also physical health. So there could be like, I don't know, I'm not saying she's going to get sick, literally get sick from the job, or there might be something that she feels is like, I feel disconnected with this one. So Osiris is also about disconnection, but it's also about replacement. So the job could be a replacement, could be something different. I'm not seeing that it's like there's a potential for anything, right? There's always a probability for that. So we don't know what's really going to happen. But let's look into 26 degrees into Leo. Okay, so Atropos is right here. Atropos was one of the, what do you call that? Not the Furies. One of the, the fates in Greek mythology. So she's the one who determines end of life things, life itself. So, she's the one who actually is about uncertainty. So the things that we can't go back, once you've made a decision, they determine what you're headed towards. So in this case, it's the choice she's making. It's like, okay, this is set. It's already set in stone. She can't. I feel like maybe in this case, whatever she's getting into, if she does get the job, it's almost like she can't turn back from this decision. I'm not saying it's a permanent job. I'm not saying that, but she probably has to work through it as well because you have Gilgamesh there. Gilgamesh is. There might be some things she'll have to work through. So she'll find her inner strength, probably from the work. I don't know. It is transit. It is in her third house, so that means she's going to learn to really see if she can embody it. And it's actually right here. It's conjunct Orcus, Metis, and Venus. So that means that it's how she relates with this job is something she's going to have to learn from. And the Orcus is really strong here, so it's trying to get her to see if this is what she really wants. Whether she keeps it or not, that's completely her choice. You also have 26 degrees jobs. So again, now tied to the job thing, right? So naturally, job that is conducive to her own health. Is it really something that she wants? Is it going to help her with her health as well? Because she has her south node in her 6th house, and because it's but you have Pluto there retrograde. It's intercepted. Sorry, my bad. It's like the more she gets into things that will trigger the past life, I think that's the better it is. I'm not asking her. The reason I'm saying all these things is not to give her some kind of like, you're gonna go through pain. That's really up to her, right? She'll learn from this process. She'll learn from all the stuff that's happening here. In the end, it's really her choice. Now, I want to go into your question itself. I think this is going to add more layers to what you were asking. I think you said that you actually says that let's see here. When was your question? I forgot what time that was. I didn't see a specific question here. Hold on. You said... Yeah, it wasn't direct. Even in Garen, it was like, it has to be very direct. What I'm trying to get here is like, what I'm trying to get in here is a horary chart, which answers questions like, yeah, it wasn't, she's like, you're getting her big part in the movie. Yeah, it wasn't asked directly. So, I mean, it's not saying that you didn't want to ask it directly. It wasn't, we didn't talk about it. So I didn't know the exact question. I cannot draw up the chart for that one. But, yeah, so I think you're adding a question here. I just saw the message you said that be happy to public, especially if we can be recognized. I don't know. In terms of recognition, let's see. Do we have Heracles here? I'm not sure if we had Heracles here. Hera's right here. She's about recognition as well. Let's see. But Hera's in retrograde, so there's doubt of recognition. So she's asking to be recognized in the first place. Then naturally she's questioning her own recognition. And that's what I'm seeing here. She has to see it from the internal side, internally. She has to actually process it internally. She's looking for something external of herself, like outside of herself. That's neediness. That's a kind of like no. She has to connect with herself and figure out what it is, not only what she really wants, but also is like why does she want it in the first place. Like for example, I'll give you an example of like what I mean by this. So if I want, let's say, a relationship, I want to find just the perfect guy, all that stuff, right? Um, but I've always when I was younger, I used to think that it's like, oh, if I look for that, I knew where it came from. It's because I didn't. It's not even knowing. Like I meditated through it and I actually processed like, why do I need that recognition? Because I wasn't loved, or at least my perception wasn't. So, but it goes beyond that. When I say if I wasn't really loved, or the love that I had from my parents, it starts from family, wasn't there, or it was uncertain. They were there, but they also weren't there. So it was a lot of very uncertain feelings and emotions and energy and experiences. So with that, I also projected onto other people. So I always got like this kind of wavy, sort of like back and forth, sort of uncertain feeling as well. So I had to work through that. I think for her, she needs to find, in terms of like jobs or career, that's a lot to do with reputation. This is why I mentioned earlier, when it comes to work, right? It's value. A lot of it is tied to self-worth. A lot of these things are tied to self-worth. The 10th house, this is career, reputation. It's tied to self-worth because it's like, if people see you a certain way, how do you see yourself a certain way? If you have good, let's say, even if you had like, you know how to make money well, this is freedom as money, sorry, money as freedom, your earning ability, even if it was good, then what? Like, what is it? How is that tied to like why you want to make money in the first place? Because money is a symbol. So if she's looking to prove herself through to the money that she gets, money is just a symbol. Money goes along with our perception of what abundance is. To be abundant has nothing to do with getting everything. Abundance stems a lot from gratitude. If she's not going into what she already has, she's not. The reason why we have abundance through gratitude is because why gratitude is powerful is because it's not just satisfaction. It's more than that. Gratitude is just, it's an energy. It's a feeling. It's an energy. It's much deeper than. It goes into like. Like it. You can't put it in words. It's hard, but it's basically this sort of I know that it's here. I know that I'm already protected. I know that I have everything that I have at every single moment. If she's looking for a job, anyone really, if we're looking for a job or a career or money-making business or whatever it is, and there's this feeling of energy like I want that because I don't have this, that's exactly what we're doing. We're telling ourselves that what we have doesn't exist. That everything that's happened, or rather everything that we already have at this moment, has no value. So we look for value. You see how it's kind of like a succubus energy, right? It's like we're trying to, because we have this perception that we do not have, period. Like we just don't have. But having is this belief of having like possession is an external thing. The reason why we have what we have is because of the choices we made, and the reason why we have those choices that we make is because we have this inner desire and intelligence to actually create. Our creative ability is beyond what we think is creative up here. Our creative ability stems from source energy, like that who we really are. It's like, oh, I can create. I do have the power. I do have the servant, but it comes from a place of like this true confidence in yourself that it's like everything is whole. I have the light and I have the dark, and it's always about being whole. I can create whatever I want to, not because like I want to, as in like I want this. It's not from a needy energy. It's not neediness. It comes from a creative energy. I'm like, that's also part of that flow of life that I'm talking about earlier. It also ties into like what is it that we really want. When I say we, I mean not just the human person, but the human that is connected. Does that make sense? I hope. So, right? Let's also see here Varuna transiting her second house, but also into the third house. So Varuna is having her try to kind of connect with the value she has of herself and being able to connect that through how she, well, her own, how she's learning of that. She's there's lessons that she's still learning and how she's kind of bridging the two together. What is my self-worth? What am I learning from it? Okay. Yeah, and she's really learning from it to be natural. It's square. It's challenging her to question her own what is natural for her. We have Artemis here, conjunct Mercury, uh, square Varuna. So these challenges aren't necessarily meant to, it's not about pain, it's perception. If we think something is giving us pain, that's our perception. But it's easier said than done. She has to go deeper into what the actual perception she has, and kind of maybe journal. Maybe she can journal. Why is it that she can look at it from a subconscious level. Then she can go into meditation. The further she goes into a meditation, the deeper she goes and really learn how to relax. Keep in mind that when you go into meditation is sometimes still perceived today as this sort of like, oh, it's peaceful, it's quiet. No, I mean, no. Meditation is a tool for us to get in contact with being itself, so that even when we go, let's say, beyond an hour of meditation, it starts to get awkward, right? That's a sign for us to also we can, if you want to go into like really allowing for it. It's really about surrendering. And that's also this whole thing with Osiris here. Pluto is telling us to surrender. Pluto is surrendering to the powerlessness or the true power from within that is connected. It's always there. It's just that we think it's not. So I can attest to that too myself. Right? So Varuna also square that's let's see here. Yeah, that's it. So it's just square Artemis Mercury here. So as for the Penelope, really it's about the interview itself. It's a questionable thing because it's in retrograde. She probably feels like it's not, because we have Penelope here. So in her own birth chart, like it's Penelope conjunct Ceres. She's basically she naturally knows how to work with, I guess you can say, interviews. She feels, but the thing is with it's square. Yeah, I'm sorry, it's conjunct Ceres, which often means it's like, okay, there's a bit of, I can meet my basic needs. I know what I want. But the thing is, it's square. Excuse me, her sun. So a lot of it is like, is she shining? She questions that, and she does it subconsciously. In fact, 1 second here, 9:12. She questions the connection she has to, is that retrograde? No, it's not. She questions her ability to connect how she packages herself, how she kind of shows herself to job interviewers. She kind of questions that. It's like she hides herself. She doesn't really shine in interviews. So I'm not saying that whether she'll get it or not. I'm not saying that. I can't really say that. But we also have Penelope square her Chiron, so a lot of wounding when it comes to her health, a lot of wounding when it comes to reputation that ties to her health. Again, it's kind of like her twin, her brother, that she's like the skin stuff, the teeth and the bones. It's tied to that. It's Capricorn. So basically like structure. So the key to Chiron is reintegrating the pain that she's had and the wounding she's had into something she can make use of. I feel like it's tied a lot to her health, to anything health related, anything that's natural and health, instead of like a part in a movie, to be honest with you. So unless the movie is also about health, unless she has to question whether that movie the audition she did was actually for higher purpose reasons, because otherwise her higher self, the soul, will kind of create things for her that just like, oh, this is it's not satisfied, I'm not satisfied with this. So you also have it square Haumea. Haumea is right here. So Haumea is fertility. Haumea is this potential to, not potential, yeah, it could be a potential to find that inner sort of creativeness, that ability to like really like be energized, full of life and full of energy. hmm And it's also about acceptance, natural abilities, talents. So so she questions that. She has a lot of challenges when it comes to her talents in terms of like having fun, because it's in the fifth house right here in Libra. Her relationship with people is tied to Libra and how she relates with that. How she kind of, how Mia and Libra I would say it's kind of like this feeling of like this ability to regenerate and transform and find a life within that actually that never dies. But because it's retrograde, because it's square her retrograde Chiron, it's almost like she probably has this belief that it's like, I'm not going to regenerate. I'm not going to learn from this. I'm not going to grow from this. It's not going to be forever. In fact, actually it is. But she just has to look inwards. The answer is always inwards. It's always inwards. The fact that her sun in itself is in the 12th house, just like her brothers, means that she questions her ability to shine. And it's funny because the sun actually is the ruling planet of the 5th house. She's not back into her childlike self. She just wants to be like, I want to get into this job because this job, because this job, this job, this job, this job. It's almost like she doesn't really feel happy about that. I can already tell because it's like she has moon in Cancer. She has her sun in Cancer, and the moon rules the sun. So what really Cancer and Pisces, Cancer people with moon in Pisces tend to want this actual connection, this familiar connection to the divine. When I say divine, I don't just mean like it's out there. It's actually in here. It's not really out there. It's our connection in here. So, I don't know. Yeah, I can't really pinpoint exactly if she's going to get this audition, this part. All I know is that there is a potential for it, but again, even if there were potential for it, that it's probably going to create some sort of like breakdown. Being honest with it. Is this the job she wants to continue later into the future? I don't know. That's really up to her. I know that's the hard truth, and that's kind of like a hard pill to swallow, as we say in English. But that's what it is. So let's look into the cards. I'm going to go into the cards right now. I'm going to add to this. Let's see what comes up. Let's see what comes up. Something wants to come out. I don't know what it is. Well, that kind of wants to come out. Actually, let's try that again. Oh, okay. Sorry, 1 second here. Okay, there you go. All right, pop that. Okay, well, that one came out. The Seven of Pentacles. Seven of Pentacles, showing that there's a lot of like doubt when it comes to hard work, the fruitfulness, just looking at it, and he looks kind of disappointed. It's like the leaves are partially green, the leaves are partially brown. It's almost like he's just waiting for someone to so this is kind of like patient. I feel like there's this sort of waiting game. There's this waiting sort of like, okay, I'm just going to do the job. Here is what it is. But then it's like half-assed. I'm just going to put this bluntly, okay? It's like half-assed. There's this like, it's part of it's green, part of it's brown. So it feels like there's fruitfulness, but there's a lack because of this waiting, right? Here is also kind of similar. Standing your ground and being true to yourself, but the black horse is signifying some sort of transformation. It is a color of death, but it's more like a transformation, and kind of this is the Knight of Pentacles, as you can see. So it's showing that it's like I have this gift. I feel like I have this gift, but I don't. In order to transform it, what do I do? So it feels like kind of like stagnancy. It feels like kind of like stuck. That's sort of the energy I'm getting right now. You have here the eight of what is it called? The Eight of Wands. It's upside down. So usually what that means is like heading towards a specific direction, but not heading towards a specific direction. It's kind of like almost like going back. It feels like it's reverting back to the past, and it's that's kind of what we talked about earlier. We also have the Emperor, but upside down. Emperor is like a certain sense of like knowing, a certain sort of wisdom, and really kind of like being kind of in charge of your own choices, and being kind of like a ruler of your own by finding your own sovereignty. But it's upside down, so there's just doubt about it. You also have here the stars. Typically, the stars often refer to what I feel like this means is like one hand in one side. She's pouring the jar of water in one hand, and she's pouring a jar in the other. So this kind of usually refers to like abundance and flow, nurturing oneself, one's physical self with one's spiritual self or emotional self, and kind of going with that and allowing for them to come together. But here's again, it's upside down, so it feels like there's no lack of flow, there's no connection to life itself. It ties in with the core thing. So there's a star right here that's different from the other stars. It feels like the North Star. So it's almost like she's not following exactly what the North Star is. But there's a potential for this. Remember, this isn't about being negative or positive. This is about choices. So it's getting her to listen and see what's inside. Getting her to kind of focus on what is going into what really gives her that bliss that I'm talking about. What really makes her happy, right? She might not feel like she knows what that is yet, but I think that she not only meditates through it, but if she really learns to slow down and figure out what that means. She'll shine when she'll know that, because her sun is in Cancer, right? So her sun is in Cancer, and Cancer people, like, they do love being secure. But what is security, right? Security can be this perception of, like, if it comes from a place of need, or like rather like just like a lack, we want security because we don't have it. But is she secure? She needs to ask herself that question. Is she secure itself in many ways? So she needs to look into the things and practice the gratitude by slowing down. So slowing down and gratitude. When I say slowing down, it's not just a physical slowing down thing. It's being present. Bring her attention to the breath, to the motion she's doing, and she'll see that life is there. Right? So, yeah. So, and she'll find a connection. She doesn't just shine in terms of, like, if she's looking to shine, she needs to also ask herself, where is that coming from? She needs to trust her emotions and feel like, where is that coming from? Because I feel like with her job that she has this huge potential to be a kind of a spiritual guide to other people. You know, she doesn't need to be into this, like, the system, unless this is a job that is tied to that. Okay, that's fine. Then maybe this is a job that she'll keep. We don't know. We don't know exactly what she applied for. But all I'm saying is because of Penelope in retrograde here, it's like this interview feels iffy. It's like, right? So again, she's, you know, she has to kind of go into that. Ah, she's being asked to. You have Loki here. I totally forgot about this. Loki is um, kind of. She feels like she's being tricked into going into this belief that it's like her own core beliefs are what's real, that beliefs are real, that the job she has to get into or the career she has to get into is real. Right? Loki is a trickster god, but Loki is also about, like, trying to prove yourself. Right? So if she's doing this all to prove herself to others, even to herself, that's not what self-worth is. Worth is like knowing your own inner value. That's what really value is. Value is, it's not knowing up here. It's the sensation of, like, eh, yeah, I have these gifts. It's wonderful. You know, it comes from a place of being humble, and but at the same time also being, like, childlike proud of oneself, and be like, yeah, I have this ability. You know, I can do these things. So she, again, going back to gratitude, and also the presence, and bringing her attention to her breath every moment she has, because now is the only truth. The present moment is the only truth. So I don't know. Whatever choice you make, the soul will always guide you. And that's the whole thing. There's no such thing as wrong or bad decision, or good or bad decision. There's always going to be lessons to be learned, because that's what we're here for. The job isn't really what's important. It's about the learning of what that means for the soul's evolution. That's really what it is. Right? So I hope that helps. I hope that was beneficial. Right? So that's it for today. If you have any questions, let me know. You know where to get a hold of me. You know, text me, all that stuff, but or message me. But that's it for today. Bye.